Which Batman movie is the best, and where does Matt Reeves' The Batman fit in? Here's our list of the worst to best Batman movies. Even though there have been a few false starts, DC's iconic Caped Crusader feels just as important on the big screen in 2022 as he does in the world of comic books. However, it wasn't always this way. Even though people have tried before, it was Tim Burton who proved that the Dark Knight story could make a great movie. Since then, Warner Brothers has been constantly reimagining the character. First, Batman and Robin, and Batman vs. Superman. Very few people who worked on Batman and Robin have good things to say about it. After the movie came out and was widely mocked, George Clooney famously said, "Killed the franchise." Clooney's Batman took away all of the character's seriousness and went back to the fun, wisecracking detective from the early comics. But even for younger fans, the tone was too cartoonish. Batman and Robin is still the worst movie in the franchise's history. Alicia Silverstone was a bad choice for Batgirl, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a bad choice for Mr. Freeze, and the nipples on the Batsuit were a bad idea. The first movie meeting of the Dark Knight and Krypton's favorite son, which was directed by the same person who made Man of Steel, couldn't fail, could it? Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice by Zack Snyder was met with very high hopes, but the plot was confusing and sometimes made no sense, and the movie spent too much time trying to be DC's answer to the MCU. Fans were quickly brought back to reality. Even though Ben Affleck wasn't as bad as some people thought he would be in the role, his fight with Superman was full of inconsistencies that led to the famous Martha moment in Dawn of Justice. The fact that Gal Gadot's debut as Wonder Woman was the best part of Batman vs. Superman says a lot. Next, Batman 1966 and Batman Forever. This continuation of the 1960s Batman TV show stars Adam West and Burt Ward as Batman and Robin, respectively. It's innocent, good-natured fun. Has it held up? No, not at all. The production is crude, which makes sense, but unlike Batman and Robin, the silliness and simple story have an undeniable charm. Even though the 1966 Batman movie isn't thought to be one of the best long-form stories about the character, people still remember it fondly 50 years after it came out, which is something to be proud of. People often criticize Joel Schumacher's first Batman movie for being the first in the series to move away from Tim Burton's dark, brooding style and toward a brighter, funnier one. But Batman Forever has a lot more depth than its successor. Some of the jokes are lame, and both Jim Carrey's Riddler and Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face are too big, but Robin's backstory is handled well, and the new neon Gotham isn't as garish as it was in Batman and Robin. Val Kilmer plays Batman in an underrated way, and while his romance with Nicole Kidman's character Dr. Meridian doesn't work, the actor gives Bruce Wayne more depth, especially as a mentor to a younger superhero. Chris O'Donnell's role as a Robin who was a little bit older than he should have been worked out well, hitting all the right angsty, rebellious 90s notes. The music was great as well. Moving on, The Dark Knight Rises and Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. The last part of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy didn't get as much praise as the first two, but it's still important Batman viewing. The Dark Knight Rises is another intense piece of Bat realism from the visionary director. It was based on the No Man's Land comic arc and features Tom Hardy's Bane, who is hard to understand. The plot isn't as tight as in previous movies. There were a few obvious leaps in logic and a twist with Talia al Ghul that gets weirder with each viewing. However, the visuals are stunning, and the main story of Bruce Wayne's career coming to an end is told well. After the chaos of The Dark Knight, Bane's city under siege strategy is also an interesting new angle. The additions of Anne Hathaway and Joseph Gordon-Levitt were met with mixed reviews, but Christian Bale's last Batman and the rest of the core supporting cast were always great. Mask of the Phantasm is often thought to be Batman's best animated adventure, even though it isn't as well known as some of his other movies. Mask of the Phantasm is a follow-up to Batman the Animated Series. The art and visuals still look great today, but the movie's best feature is its mix of gothic horror mystery, classic cartoon action, and a well-told love story. Even though Kevin Conroy's Batman is less well-known, he has all the layers and nuances of his live-action counterparts. Classic villains pop up everywhere, making this original story feel like it came straight from the comics. Mask of the Phantasm may not have been as popular as Tim Burton or Christopher Nolan's films, but it has remained a cult favorite for the past 26 years. Next up, Batman 1989 and Batman Begins. Tim Burton's first Batman movie is the only reason why the character has become such a movie icon. With Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne and Jack Nicholson as the Joker, Burton boiled down the story of Batman to its most important parts, gave it a more modern setting, and added his own quirky style. The Prince dance scene aside, the 1989 Batman movie was true enough to the comics to attract fans, but also easy enough for newcomers to understand. The origin story of the Joker was only slightly changed. As with many other Tim Burton movies, this one had a playful darkness that both young and old people liked. It also introduced a whole new generation to the wonderful world of masked vigilantes with mental problems who fight criminals. George Clooney thought that he had killed off the Batman movies, but they were just getting started. Christopher Nolan's version of the Dark Knight mythology was more realistic, and the fact that Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman, and Gary Oldman were in the supporting cast made Bruce Wayne's return to the big screen feel like a big deal. With Ra's al Ghul and a changed Scarecrow as the main bad guys, this new origin story for Batman was not at all typical, but it made Batman more important than ever. Not for the first time, Batman Begins has trouble giving Bruce an interesting love story, but in every other way, Nolan's first superhero movie is a huge success, even though it takes a lot of risks, like changing the Batmobile and destroying Wayne Manor. But this was just a taste of the great things that were to come. We can't leave out The Batman and Batman Returns. The Batman is not the best Batman movie ever made, but Matt Reeves' visually striking and philosophically deep meditation on Batman and Bruce Wayne's identity takes the best parts of the best Batman movies and combines them. It's more complicated than The Dark Knight, and while it's not as grotesque and gothic as Burton's Batman Returns, it's clear that it knows Gotham City needs to be a character in a way that Nolan and the DCEU never did. Robert Pattinson's Batman is more than just a moody young man, and Reeves understands both sides of the character better than any other Batman movie. The supporting characters are great, and the story keeps you interested, with the promise of more to come. The only problem with The Batman is that it's a little too long, and Paul Dano's Riddler and Colin Farrell's Penguin don't have enough to do. There will be more from both of them, but the Riddler in particular should not have gone away while Pattinson's Batman resolved other plot points that were linked to him. Tim Burton and Michael Keaton's first movie, Batman, was a big hit, so they worked together again on the sequel with more confidence. This made Batman Returns better in every way than its predecessor. Set around Christmas, Burton's gothic style was turned up a few notches, and Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman filled Jack Nicholson's role in the franchise very well. Batman Returns walks a fine line between being serious and being funny. It also has a more complicated plot than the first movie and gives Keaton's Batman more depth. Finally, the best Batman movie, The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is still Batman's best big screen moment, as it has the story that most people think of when they think of modern Batman. Heath Ledger's game-changing performance as the Joker is a big reason for the movie's success, but the plot is also a big reason. It's a character-driven story that touches on politics, philosophy, morality, and more. Even though The Dark Knight is pretty complicated for a superhero movie, it never forgets where it came from. It has some beautifully shot action scenes and some old-fashioned car chases to balance out the more intellectual parts of the movie. The new Maggie Gyllenhaal helps fix the broken love story from Batman Begins, Christian Bale hits his stride as the franchise's leading man, and the score by Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard brings everything together. Even though The Dark Knight hasn't done as well at the box office as it did a few years ago, it will always be remembered as the movie that showed superhero movies could be works of art. Well, that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, cheers!